The interstellar trade hub of Zenthra 9 buzzed like a hive. Each of the 12 tiers sprawled with species from every known sector of the galaxy, towering gremmery, their insectoid limbs skittering over crates, squat Herathans grunting as they bargained over barrels of precious ion slurry, and of course the ubiquitous humans, bartering their tech and trinkets from 1,000 distant colonies. Rin, a seasoned smuggler with a knack for being exactly where he shouldn't be, strolled through the lower tiers' market lanes. His boots clacked softly on the metal deck plates, his hands stuffed casually in his jacket pockets. To most he might look like another drifter, scruffy and unremarkable. But he wasn't here for ordinary goods. The Zenthra 9 Trade Bazaar was famous for the kind of merchandise you couldn't find in official cargo holds. Contraband, rare relics, and things that governments tended to frown upon. Rin had a buyer back on Eros Station waiting for an old Urash power core, a piece of tech said to be virtually indestructible. If he could haggle the price down here, it'd be a tidy profit. That's when he first saw her. The Urash warrior was impossible to miss. Towering above most humanoids, her skin shimmered faintly silver under the station's overhead lights, and her plated armor gleamed as if she polished it hourly. Her long, triple-braided crest fell down her back like a cascade of steel cables. The Irish weren't exactly common in human-occupied sectors, and Rin had only ever heard stories about them. Fierce warriors, utterly humorless, and almost always accompanied by tales of blood-soaked victories on distant battlefields. She stood at a merchant's stall, examining a data tablet the size of a dinner tray. Rin's eyes were drawn to the weapon at her hip, a curved blade that seemed both ancient and unbreakable, not exactly the kind of company he usually sought out. Still, the sight was fascinating. She didn't shout or boast like some of the Grimari warriors. She didn't even speak loudly. Instead, she communicated in low, measured tones, pointing at items and nodding sharply. Rin found himself stepping closer, curiosity tugging at him. He'd dealt with dozens of species in his time, but never one of the Urash. What were they really like? Captain Rin. Kira's voice crackled through his comm piece. His first mate was somewhere deeper in the marketplace. We've got a potential problem near Docking Bay 6. Someone's asking questions about the Adrastia's manifest. Stall them, Rin muttered back. I'm not done shopping. I don't think... Rin clicked off the comm before Kira could finish. He wasn't in the mood for her caution today. The Urash warrior glanced up from the merchant's wares, her icy gaze sweeping over the crowd. It landed briefly on Rin. His heart did a little double-take. For a moment he thought she was about to approach him, but then her attention shifted, back to the tablet. He exhaled. Not someone you mess with. But as he turned away, a booming voice cut through the din. Rin, you slippery void rat. A merchant he knew, barely, was waving a bundle of cables in his direction. Got those fusion regulators you were after? Where you been hiding? Rin groaned. Great. Attention was the last thing he needed. He started to walk faster, but not before his gaze flicked back toward the Urash warrior. She was still watching him. Her piercing, silvery eyes didn't seem angry, just observant, calculating. He hadn't even said a word to her, and yet she seemed to have sized him up already, as if she knew exactly who he was. Hey, are you listening? The merchant shouted again. What do you think of this setup? Pretty. Cute, huh? The word tumbled out of Rin's mouth before he could stop it, his voice carrying just a little too loudly. Yeah, cute. The alien warrior's head snapped up, her silvery skin flushed, shifting to a startling, vibrant red. The crowd near her went deathly quiet. The merchant's grin vanished, and Rin froze. Cute. He'd called her cute. Why had he even said it? She took a slow, deliberate step toward him, the color in her face deepening, her hand drifting toward the hilt of her blade. Rin's mind scrambled for an explanation. The Irish didn't exactly have a reputation for tolerating insults, or compliments for that matter. Something about their warrior code, their rigid hierarchy, their Rin held up his hands, palms out. It was a mistake? The Irash's face darkened further. For a moment he thought she might actually draw her weapon. Instead, she pivoted sharply and stalked off into the crowd, her armor glinting like the edge of a blade. Rin let out a long breath. He'd survived the encounter, but as the crowd slowly returned to its usual buzz, he realized something unnerving. In all his years of trading, smuggling, and surviving on the fringes of civilization, he'd never made a Yirash warrior turn bright red. He wasn't entirely sure if that was a good thing or a very, very bad thing. And for the first time in ages, he felt Rin was still shaking his head at the bizarre encounter when he got back to the docking ring. The Adrastea, his ship, rested among a line of freighters and couriers on the lower concourse. Her hull might have been a little scarred and her sensor array a patchwork of older tech, but she was fast, reliable, and, most importantly, his. Kira was already waiting by the boarding ramp, arms crossed, and an impatient scowl on her face. "What's the story this time?" she asked. "I heard you stirred up a Yirash. Did you really call her cute?" Rin rolled his eyes. "It wasn't like that. I was talking to a merchant, not her. It just sort of slipped out." "And now she's out for your blood?" Kira sighed. "This is why I handle the talking. She's not out for my blood." Rin looked back down the corridor, almost expecting to see Zephyra striding after him, blade drawn, but the passageway remained empty. "At least I don't think she is." Kira tilted her head. "You don't think?" Rin waved her off and marched up the ramp. "Forget it. We've got cargo to move. Did you sort out the manifest issue?" "No. One got a look at it. I convinced the dockmaster it was a routine delivery." Kira followed him inside and sealed the hatch. "You know we can't stay here long, though. Word gets around on Zenthra." Rin slid into the pilot's seat and began prepping the launch sequence. "Relax, we're leaving now." He started the ignition cycle and the ship vibrated to life. "Plotting a course back to Eros. We'll offload the cargo, collect our credits, and be gone before anyone cares." Kira settled into the co-pilot's chair, her sharp green eyes scanning the console. "You'd better hope you're right." The Adrastea eased out of the docking bay and slipped into open space. Rin let out a long breath as the station receded behind them. It wasn't his first brush with trouble on Zenthra, and it probably wouldn't be the last. But just as he started to relax, an alert chimed from the navigation panel. "What now?" he muttered, punching up the display. "Unscheduled proximity alert." Kira frowned. "Are we picking up another ship?" "Looks like it." He scanned the data stream. The signal was faint, but the trajectory was steady. And it was closing in fast. "Crap!" The proximity alert grew more insistent. A sleek, predatory silhouette appeared on the sensors. It was a Yirash warship. Smaller than a dreadnought, but faster and better armed than anything Rin's little freighter could hope to outrun. "Tell me that's not her," Kira said. "Looks like her," Rin replied, grimacing. "What did I say?" "Stirred her up," Kira muttered. "What now, Captain?" Rin's hands danced over the controls. "What else?" "We run!" The Adrastea surged forward as Rin slammed the throttle. He maneuvered them into the chaos of the sector's main shipping lanes, threading the needle through freighters, cargo barges, and a few slow-moving luxury cruisers. The Yirash ship pursued with unsettling precision, weaving through the same gaps with ease. "They're gaining," Kira said. her voice tight. I know they're gaining, Rin shot back. Plot a jump to Eros, quick. Kira tapped furiously at the nav console. I'm trying, but we've got interference. The station's traffic control grid is still locking down the surrounding routes. We need to get clear first. Fine. We'll get clear. Rin yanked the Adrastea into a sharp turn, taking them away from the bustling lanes and into a debris field where older ships had met their end. Ancient hull fragments, shattered antenna arrays, and gutted engine cores drifted in a slow tumbling waltz. He squeezed through gaps that barely seemed big enough for his freighter's wingspan, hoping the Irash ship would hesitate. But it didn't. The pursuer followed, its sleek form cutting through the wreckage like a knife. Rin cursed under his breath. These Irash warriors weren't just strong, they were stubborn. And she'd clearly made this personal. Kira's console pinged. I've got a partial route out of here. If we can hit it in time, we can make the jump. Good enough. Send it to my panel. Rin scanned the trajectory, then gunned the engines. The Adrastea roared past a massive, jagged chunk of an old dreadnought's hull. Hang on, this might get bumpy. A volley of energy blasts streaked past the ship's rear shields, narrowly missing them. Kira checked the weapons readout. They're trying to disable us, not destroy us. Probably want you alive. Great. That's comforting, Rin muttered. The Adrastea shot free of the debris field, its engines howling as Rin lined them up with the escape vector. The Irash ship lagged just slightly behind, still matching them turn for turn. Jump in 3. Kira counted down. 2, 1, mark! Rin hit the drive. The stars stretched into blinding lines, then disappeared as the ship surged into faster-than-light travel. For a few seconds, the cockpit filled with a low hum and the soft flicker of hyperspace distortion. Then the tension eased. Kira exhaled, slowly, sitting back in her seat. Well, we're not dead. Not yet, Rin agreed, glancing at the navigation readouts. But that was a little too close for comfort. Close? Kira shot him a look. Rin, you called a Irash warrior cute. Do you have any idea how stupid that is? I didn't mean it, he said a little defensively. It was just a word. Didn't think she'd take it so seriously. She's Irash, Kira reminded him. They take everything seriously, especially their honor. Rin frowned at the swirling void outside the cockpit. Well, she can't have much honor if she's chasing down a harmless smuggler like me. Kira groaned. Harmless, sure. That's what you are. Rin didn't respond. He was too busy wondering why she'd taken off after him so quickly. Maybe it wasn't just about the accidental comment. Maybe it was Rin didn't expect to wake up strapped to a chair. He'd been running, sure, but his last memory was still of the jump out of Zenthra's sector. Then darkness. Now he found himself under a dim metallic ceiling, the low hum of an unfamiliar power source vibrating beneath him. The chair held him tightly, mechanical restraints locked around his wrists and ankles. Across the room, standing at ease as though this were an everyday conversation, was Zephyra. She looked every bit as fearsome as before, if not more so. The silvery shine of her skin had returned, her crimson blush from their marketplace encounter long gone. Her battle armor reflected the dim lighting, and her gaze was sharp and calculating, but there was something in her expression now that Rin hadn't seen before. Not anger, not embarrassment. It was a thoughtful kind of intensity, as if she were debating something inside herself. Rin. Her voice cut through the quiet like a blade. Human smuggler, unlicensed captain of the Adrastea. Captain sure, unlicensed, well, that's subjective. He tried to sound lighthearted, but the restraints made it hard to sell the casual act. Zephyra didn't smile. You have no registration in any known human or alliance database. You have no documented trade contracts, and yet you operate openly. Openly's a strong word. Rin leaned back, or as much as he could in the chair. You make it sound like I'm running a scam. I just deliver goods. I'm a freelancer. You are a criminal, Zephyra corrected. Her words were precise, deliberate, and your presence in Zenthra 9's marketplace was a violation of at least 3 interstellar trade codes. Rin smirked. I'm not much for codes. Her eyes narrowed. I've noticed. Look, he said, testing the restraints again. This is all very flattering. You're clearly interested in me. I mean, that's why you chased me halfway. Across the sector, right? Zephyra's gaze flickered. There it was again. That strange hesitation. A moment of something softer before her stoicism returned. You insulted me, she said. Did I? Rin's grin faded slightly. I don't remember pulling a blaster on you or stealing your cargo. You spoke to me, Zephyra said, her voice growing more intense, in a manner that was unbecoming. He blinked. Unbecoming? I'm sorry, I don't. His eyes widened. Oh, wait, you mean the cute thing? Her face darkened. That faint reddish hue returned, spreading across her cheeks. Rin winced inwardly. He didn't think it was possible, but she looked even more intimidating now. I didn't mean it, he said quickly. It wasn't about you, it just slipped out. You called me cute, she repeated, her voice low and dangerous. Well, Rin said carefully, it's not the worst thing you could be called. Is it? Her gaze turned icy, and for a moment he thought she might strike him. But then she stepped back and folded her arms. The Yarash do not consider such terms a compliment. It implies weakness, diminishment. A warrior's strength is their identity. To be cute is to be trivial. Rin nodded slowly. Okay, I get it. You don't want to be seen as anything less than what you are. I was out of line. Zephyra's expression softened just a fraction. Your words, she said, almost hesitantly, made me question how others see me. They forced me to consider whether my reputation is my own, or if it is merely a construct of what others expect. Rin tilted his head. So, this isn't just about me calling you cute. No, she admitted. It is not. Well, he said, a small smile tugging at the corner of his mouth. That's a relief. For a second there I thought I was about to be executed for a compliment. Zephyra's lips pressed into a thin line. You are still a criminal. Right. Rin sighed. There's that. She stepped closer again, her imposing figure looming over him, but this time her tone was quieter. You may be of use to me, Rin. Use? He raised an eyebrow. That sounds ominous. I need information, she said. Information that only someone who operates outside the law might possess, Rin's smile returned. So you do need me. What kind of information are we talking about? Zephyra didn't answer immediately. Instead, she leaned closer, her voice dropping to a near whisper. There is a faction within my clan, she said, that seeks to undermine the Yurish Council. I have been tasked with finding the source of their funding, their connections. Rin gave her a skeptical look. And you think I'm tied to that? I'm just a guy trying to make a living. Not tied, she said, but aware, your kind. Smugglers, traders. Know the channels that these factions use. You've seen the patterns. The shipments that don't appear on ledgers, the credits that change hands in unregulated accounts. He shrugged as best he could. You're not wrong, but that kind of intel doesn't come cheap. Zephyra's eyes narrowed again. You are hardly in a position to demand payment. True, Rin admitted, glancing at his restraints. But you need me, and I like to think I'm worth a little negotiation. She studied him in silence for a long moment. Finally, she reached out and pressed a button on the side of the chair. The restraints clicked open, freeing his wrists and ankles. Rin sat up slowly, rubbing his sore arms. Zephyra took a step back, keeping her gaze locked on him. "Consider this your only opportunity," she said. "Work with me, and I will ensure your safety. Betray me and you will face consequences." Rin stood, stretching out his legs. "Well, you're not exactly selling it as a fun partnership. But sure, why not? Let's see where this goes." Zephyra said nothing, simply turning on her heel and motioning for him to follow. As Rin trailed her through the ship's corridors, he couldn't help but wonder what he'd gotten himself into. But one thing was certain. This was going to be a lot more interesting than smuggling power cores. The command deck of Zephyra's ship bristled with the precision and restraint of Irash discipline. Every console shone spotless. Every officer stood straight-backed and purposeful. It was a stark contrast to Rin's own freighter, where the cockpit usually had a half-empty stim cup rattling around and Kira's boots kicked up on the console. As Rin took his place near the central holotable, the faint red grid of a sector map came to life, casting an eerie glow over the room. "This is the route they've been using," Zephyra said, her voice firm. She pointed at a blinking corridor on the hologram. "Reckon's forces move supplies through this lane at irregular intervals, avoiding official trade scans." Rin crossed his arms, studying the map. "Reckon? As in the Reckon? I thought that pirate had been wiped out a decade ago." Zephyra's gaze was sharp. The reports of his demise were greatly exaggerated. He has returned stronger and, with deeper connections, he's been funneling resources to the Urash dissidents. "And you're just finding this out now?" Rin asked, a hint of incredulity in his tone. She didn't flinch. "We were aware of unauthorized movements. It wasn't until I began investigating their patterns that I confirmed his involvement. He's exploiting the fractures in our society, funding the very people I'm trying to stop." Rin rubbed the back of his neck. "Well, you've got my attention. What's the plan?" Zephyra turned to the gathered officers. "Our goal is to intercept Reckon's next shipment before it reaches its destination. This is not a standard engagement. He has already shown that he's willing to risk everything to protect his operation." The room buzzed with quiet murmurs. The Urash officers seemed uneasy, perhaps not at the thought of a fight, but at the realization that Reckon had come so far under their radar. Zephyra raised a hand and the murmurs silenced. "You have all served with honor," she said. "But this mission requires cooperation. We will have to work alongside Captain Rin and his crew." Rin coughed. "Crew's a generous word. It's mostly just me and Kira." Zephyra ignored his remark. "They have experience navigating unregulated space and evading detection. We will use their expertise." One of the Urash officers, a tall male with a deep scar across his jaw, stepped forward. "Commander, is this wise? They are smugglers, not soldiers. What guarantee do we have that they won't betray us?" "I don't see myself betraying anyone who could crush me like a tin can," Rin said dryly. "But thanks for the vote of confidence." Zephyra raised a hand again, silencing the officer. "I will vouch for them. They are under my command now. That is enough." Rin raised an eyebrow at that but didn't argue. He wasn't eager to test her patience. She had that air about her, the kind that told you she'd cut a problem in half if it made things simpler. Kira, who had been quietly observing, finally stepped forward. "What kind of resistance are we expecting?" Zephyra turned back to the holotable, inputting a command that brought up a wireframe image of Reckon's flagship. Reckon is known for employing a mix of salvaged military technology and retrofitted pirate ships. His crew consists of mercenaries, former prisoners, and some Urash defectors. He will fight tooth and claw to protect his shipments. And if we don't stop it? Kira pressed. Then the Urash Council's position weakens, Zephyra replied. And the dissidents gain the resources they need to escalate. If that happens, we may lose control of several key outposts. It will spiral into chaos. Rin let out a low whistle. So, no pressure. Zephyra fixed him with a cold stare. I expect you to take this seriously. I am, Rin replied quickly, seriously considering how I'm going to stay alive through all of this. The plan was straightforward in theory. Zephyra's ship would approach the trade lane first, activating a dampening field to disable Reckon's smaller escorts. Meanwhile, Rin and Kira, using the Adrastia's smaller profile, would slip into the freighter's path, cutting off its escape route. The goal was to board it, seize the cargo, and force Reckon's forces into a corner. In execution, it was anything but simple. As soon as Zephyra's ship dropped out of hyperspace near the trade lane, Reckon's forces appeared on their scopes. The dampening field worked. Several escort fighters stuttered to a halt, their engines failing. But the freighter itself powered up its shields and started to veer off course. Rin, piloting the Adrastia, darted ahead to block its path. Kira, he called over the comms, get ready to hit the scramblers. We can't let that thing jump. On it, Kira said, her hands flying over the console. The Adrastia's systems buzzed, sending out an electronic pulse that disrupted the freighter's navigational array. It swerved wildly, almost colliding, with a derelict mining drone. Zephyra, Rin said, we're in position, any time now. On the Urash ship, Zephyra directed her crew with military precision. Fire a warning shot across their bow. Make them hesitate. A burst of plasma streaked from her ship's forward cannons, skimming close enough to Reckon's freighter to light up its shields. The freighter slowed for a moment, but then a swarm of pirate vessels surged into view. Reinforcements, Reckon, must have had waiting just beyond the trade lane. Of course he has backup, Rin muttered. Why wouldn't he? Hold your position, Zephyra ordered. We need to secure the freighter before dealing with the reinforcements. Kira's voice came over the comm. I hope you have a good boarding plan because I don't think our shields will last long in a firefight. Rin gritted his teeth and steered closer to the freighter's underbelly. Get the harpoons ready. We're not leaving without that cargo. Zephyra's ship and her disciplined crew kept the reinforcements at bay, while the Adrastia latched onto the freighter. With the harpoons secured, Rin and Kira boarded through an airlock breach, weapons at the ready. They fought their way past, a few mercenaries inside, nothing the two of them couldn't handle, but time was running short. The Urash ship couldn't hold off the reinforcements forever. Zephyra's voice came over the comms. You have 5 minutes, retrieve the cargo and get out. Yeah, no pressure, Rin muttered, leading Kira toward the cargo bay. Let's move. The fight intensified as they reached the cargo hold, but eventually they managed to secure the crates Zephyra needed. The Adrastia detached just as Zephyra's ship laid down a covering barrage, forcing Reckon's reinforcements to scatter. When the freighter jumped to hyperspace moments later, its hold was empty. Reckon's forces had been stopped, for now. Rin, battered but alive, brought the Adrastia back to Zephyra's ship, docking alongside to transfer the cargo and discuss the next steps. You made good on your word, Zephyra said as she inspected the crates. I expected more resistance. I aim to impress, Rin said, rubbing his bruised shoulder. So what happens now? Zephyra glanced at him. Now we regroup. Reckon will retaliate. But we've disrupted his supply chain. This is only the beginning. Rin couldn't tell if she sounded confident or resigned, but he had a feeling that whatever came next, it wasn't going to be any easier than what they'd just been through.